For some more stocks to consider for your personal watch list and broader market trends to watch, I want to welcome in our next guest. That's Dan Crowley, Portfolio Manager, Nightview Capital. Dan, thank you so much for joining us and kicking off this new week. And honestly, this is the last full trading week of the year because we've got the holidays over the next 2 weeks. You have some stock picks I know you want to talk about in a moment, but let's start big picture with the macro. What are you watching as we wind down this year and head into 2025?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Diane. Ultimately, we think it's a great time to be an active investor. When we look at things high level, we have a robust economy, labor market's holding up, inflation has been more or less tamed. And so importantly, we believe we're heading towards a period of kind of rapid technological shifts. Whenever that has happened historically, opportunities have always been created, and generally speaking, those opportunities are large. So from a high level, especially looking out a couple of years, we really like the environment of stock pickers.
You said the environment for stock pickers out a couple of years. For stock pickers, the theme that has been pretty consistent this year and even going back to last year has been AI in the tech sector. You had the Mag 7 and a return to those being the leaders as we close out the year. What are you watching and paying attention to when it comes to AI for 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of focus the past couple of years has been on the software side. So kind of the ChatGPTs of the world, the LLMs, which are, incredibly powerful tools. But, through our research, we think we're at an inflection point, basically in the use of real world AI. So these are intelligent automated systems, and this will basically create twofold opportunities. Entirely new product categories. So in the company like a Tesla, that's autonomous driving, ultimately humanoid robots. In existing lines, we see a strong capacity to drive earnings expansion in existing businesses. So for example, Amazon, 2 weeks ago, Andy Jassy at reInvent said, they might have the possibility to reduce their cost to serve by 25% in their existing warehouses. I mean, these are huge business lines, and 25% is a very big number. So we're kind of excited both from that top line perspective and then also an earnings expansion perspective.
And then when it comes to Amazon, do you see AWS as the biggest growth driver in 2025?
Yeah, certainly. We see kind of three pillars for kind of the next leg up in the Amazon equity. It's been trading kind of sideways for a long period of time. I think 2 years ago, the retail valuation was left for dead and people only thought AWS could drive it going forward. We've seen a right sizing of that business after COVID. And again, we see the possibility for real world AI to drive earnings expansion there. And then we've been incredibly heartened by the progress that we've seen from AWS on the AI side. And again, this is both from on-premise and the AI transition, something we see lasting throughout the decade. So there's kind of three pillars and a lot under one hood there.
And then let's talk a little bit more about another one of your picks. So Amazon, one of your picks, Tesla, another one of your picks. It's not as controversial of a pick as it would have been earlier this year. And to be fair to Tesla, you started to see a recovery before the election, but you've especially seen some strength post-election. What's the case for Tesla in 2025? Is it about the full self-driving? Is it about, Elon Musk always says Tesla is more than just an EV company. It's an AI company. What's your view on it for 2025? What makes it constructive for you?
Yeah, I mean, the next S wave of growth that we're seeing in Tesla are in the multi-trillion-dollar addressable market. So that's autonomy and humanoid robots. And ultimately, those are AI products. So I believe that the market itself is doing a bit of a repricing, but ultimately we're talking about the future of transportation here. And when we look out, ultimately we believe the dominant automotive platform will be EVs paired with autonomy. The legacy OEMs are either cutting or removing both their EV and autonomy programs. So Tesla is in basically a one-of-one position to capture that market, if things proceed as we expect. Again, the energy business is growing 50% a year. It's still a nascent business. So from our perspective, we're still in very early innings here, and this is a play that we see compounding out throughout the decade.
Okay, and then you've got there's a bull with you today on this. Dan Ives has upgraded over at Wedbush, upgraded his target on Tesla, seeing it rising to more than $500 a share next year, and you're seeing it rally today more than 5%. But let's talk a pick to me that I thought was I don't want to call it controversial, but it certainly hasn't had strength this year. It's a play on the experiences economy. Airbnb, what's the thesis here?
Yeah, ultimately, we think it's a great founder-led platform company, and it's not just been this year. It's basically traded flat since its IPO, since which we've seen a market improvement in all three financial statements: balance sheet, income statement, cash flow. We see the core business growing solidly and profitably, and we believe the market's ultimately underestimating the impact of their expansion markets, so their international markets. But we believe that there's long-term behavioral shifts towards unique travel and hospitality experiences. One of the things we point to is that in 1990, only 5% of Americans had a passport. That number is now 50%. And these are trends that we see accelerating, especially on the exit out of COVID. So we're believers that we're entering a fairly prosperous period of economic growth. And we think that kind of the yin and the yang to these integrated robotics into our life and this more science fiction-y stuff, that there's going to be an innate human desire for these travel experiences, and that's what the data is kind of proving out. So yeah, it's something that we see kind of continuing throughout the decade.
So you said you believe that we're entering a period of prosperous economic growth, but are there any potential headwinds that you see or risks to that view?
Yeah, when we look at GDP growth as basically a function of labor and productivity, we're not incredibly bullish on the growth of labor. But when we look at the transformative power of AI as a productivity tool, that's really where we see a lot of the GDP growth going forward. And so, there's always things that could happen. There's always force majeure. But from our perspective, especially taking a multi-year time horizon, which we do, we're optimistic.
And then, I want to kind of go back to one of the broad themes that we talked about, that being AI. It's been the play for the past couple years, expected to continue to be a theme next year. It's viewed obviously as a transformational technology. Many have likened it to the dot-com boom, et cetera. And it's expected to change industries, the job market, et cetera. What industries do you expect to become obsolete as a result of the expansion of AI in 2025 and even beyond?
I think 2025 is probably a little early to call for the obsolescence of any entire industry. I do think that as opposed to obsolescence, I think we're going to see more transformation. So just like with the internet, there's going to be an adapt or die kind of approach that needs to be taken. So retail didn't become obsolete because of the internet. It just had to evolve. So I think that businesses will have to evolve and incorporate. And ultimately, I think that's a good thing. We're driving efficiencies in the economy, and I do think that will spur growth. But it's not unlikely that this plays out over obviously longer than a 1-year period. But on the 3 to 5 year horizon, I think significant moves, in terms of incorporating AI into the business environment will occur.
Okay, all right. This will certainly be space to watch. And full self-driving, although I'm more open to that, I'm just going to give a little personal take. I don't know that I'm ready for the robo-taxis yet with the nobody in the front seat. All right. Dan Crowley with both stock picks and a macro perspective, Night View Capital. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.